And they wrote back and said, well, we haven't heard from the Dodge City Police Department yet. He'd heard from all the places we lived, Minnesota and Texas, but he didn't hear from Dodge City Police. Well, so I called the police station and wanted to know why they hadn't sent that in. And so then they sent it in, and then it went right through that he could join, because they didn't hear from the police. They thought maybe I kept it or something. But anyway, he went to Alabama, went through officers training. He graduated a first lieutenant, is it? What did they grade?
Second lieutenant.
Second lieutenant.
Actually, no,
No, ensign. First he was an ensign, then a second lieutenant, then he got to be a first lieutenant, and then he was sent overseas on a ship, and they were bombarding the Japanese, was it? Or
No,
Vietnamese?
No. It must be in the Korean.
Korean, they were bombing the
What, how old is he?
50, 60. Anyway, the guns were so loud they ruined his ears, so they put him in the hospital because he wasn't hearing the orders the things that the sergeants and something were telling him. So he went to the hospital in Japan. He was there for Christmas that year, and he had my telephone number. So 5 o'clock in the morning, I was up putting a turkey in for Christmas dinner, having a big Christmas, and the phone rang, and it was David from Japan calling to wish me a happy, Merry Christmas. And I was delighted to hear from him, and so he was okay, not to worry about him. He said he was well off and just in there for his ears, not hearing them. So then he got out of the service shortly, landed in Oakland, California, and then they sent him clear to the East Coast. They flew him to the East Coast to learn how to lip read. And he was there a month or two. And then and in the meantime, but while he was in the hospital over there, the government had sent me a wire, and a taxi cab come bringing me this wire saying he was in the hospital in Japan. But I knew he was all right because I'd gotten his phone call. But I thought of the mothers that got the word that their sons had been killed, and I felt so sorry for them because this was kind of a shocker just to get that message. Well, anyway, he came home, and then he had a girlfriend. He got engaged in New York, in the East Coast, Pennsylvania, I believe it was. He got engaged to Bridget. Well, finally Bridget came here to see him. And she was an okay girl, except that she was so slow she could take an hour eating a salad. And we thought, boy, she's not very whippy. So, anyhow, I wasn't too cracked up about her, but I thought it was his choice. So be it. Whatever is his choice. Okay. So then, at Christmas time that year, he was teaching in Lincoln School here in Dodge, and he went to see Bridget in New York, and so he come driving back home. They broke up. He come driving back home, and I wondered, and here it is, New Year's Day, and I thought, what's he coming home for? He was going to stay and go right back to where was it, Hayes, and teach. And I said, well, what's wrong? And he said, well, Bridget and I broke up. And he was happy as a lark. And of course I was happy. So then I said, do you want to work tonight? See, he would have played at the Lamplighter in the band and made it probably $80 for that night, because that's the best paying night of the year. And I said, you want to work tonight? Doyd, he needs people at the bar. And he says, yeah, I'll work. So I called Doyd Cecil and asked him if he needed some help. David came back from the East Coast. So he says, yeah, send him in. What time you want him, Doyd? He says, tell him to be here by 6 o'clock. So I said, okay. So I go into work at about 5, and he comes in to work when he's supposed to be there, and he has him help seat the people. So after the night wears on, Doyd was drinking a little bit, and I don't know what David had to drink, but if anything, but I didn't think he drank a beer until he went to service. But anyway, Ramona Love was at the dance with her folks and Bee Schaefer and all of her family. And her boyfriend, she had come home for Christmas from wherever she was going to college or whatever. Anyway, Bee Schaefer said, I'm going to introduce David to Ramona. So she said, Ramona, come on, I want you to meet David Dellinger. Took him over and met David Dellinger, and Ramona fell in love with him right now. But David's a little slower. And so anyway, he asked her to dance the last dance. And when they played Old Lang Syne, Ramona says, I just couldn't help it. I just reached up and kissed him. And then she wondered if he'd ever call her again, because she was wondering if he had hair on his arms. She liked men with hair on their arms. That showed manlyhood, I guess. Anyway, finally it took about a week or two, I don't know what it was, and he called her and asked her for a date. And oh boy, she was so excited. And they started going together, and things just led to where they are now, and they're still happy. And I'm glad. I'm happy too. She's a wonderful daughter-in-law and a wonderful wife. And so sweet. Well, David and Mona had 3 lovely children. Scott's a teacher with his master's degree. Marie is a, what is she? Occupational therapist with a master's degree. And Laura's studying to be a doctor. She's already walking the halls with the doctors. And she and Marie both graduated as valedictorian of their class of 3 to 400. And Scott graduated with honors from high school. So they got 3 pretty smart kids, and they're good kids. And now they've got children, great-grandchildren. We got little Henry from Marie, and we got 3 little ones from Scott. And they are beautiful too. Then Marie's going to get married next spring in April, I believe it is. And
What?
Isn't it April?
Not Marie, she's already married.
Oh, I meant Laura. Laura's going to get married in April, this coming spring. So that'll be a big get-together in our family. David, you were my firstborn. And I was so proud of you and so glad to take you to meet your daddy. And you've always been such a good boy. And your word was your bond, and I could just trust anything you told me. And I've been very proud of you and loved you so much. I have loved all of them, but there's something about the firstborn that's just special. And I want you to know that. And you've got a good family, a good wife, and I'm so happy you're happily married, and now you're going to build a new house, and oh, that's going to be another blessing in your life. I just hope and pray for you, dear, that your back gets better, and that you live for Well, Bob was born out in Plainview at a lady's house. She was a nurse.
Plainview what?
Minnesota.
There you go.
And she was a nurse, and her house was right beside my sister Margaret's. So I took David and Donna, and Margaret took care of them. And that way, if I had the baby at her house and she took care of me, David and Donna could come over every day and see me while I was in bed. And I felt better having them near, because it's tough to leave your little ones at home and go away for several days to have another one. But anyway, Bob was 21 inches long. I've forgotten what he weighed, but he was a nice, tall, slim baby. And when he was 2 years old, he got polio, and his right leg is crippled. He walks with a limp, but he gets around, and he doesn't cry about it. So Bob has always been close to me because he hasn't moved away. And I've always relied upon him until I met Frank. And when I decided I'd marry Frank, Bob was tickled to death because I was off the hook with him then, and poor Frank had to take care of me. But he's been a good and loving husband. And it's been a very good 15 years that we've been together, and we've traveled every state west. Bob used to mow my grass, and I could remember at 10 o'clock at night, if the water froze up, why, he'd bring out a heater and defrost it for me, and oh, how glad I was that he could help me. And every time the car wouldn't start or got something wrong with it, I'd call Bob, and here he'd come with his little bag of tools and help me out. And I could always rely on Bob to help. And he decided to get a riding lawnmower. It'd be easier. So he got a riding lawnmower, and that made the job more fun and much easier to help Mom. But he always helped me, no matter what I needed. Sometimes he'd crack up and make fun of me and get his jollies in, but I understood that was Bob, and that's the way it went. Yeah, I kind of excuse him sometimes. And he used to tease me about being heavy, and then when he got heavy, I said, see, that's what you get for teasing your mom. So, but we always got along. We never had any troubles. And he married Connie, and I love Connie to death. She's just exactly like my own daughter. I couldn't ask for a better daughter-in-law, except I got another one about as good, and that just don't know her quite a bit as well, and that's Mona, because she's gone. And then we got, well, Bob was always a busy one. Man, he just was busy all the time. And they used to dig holes across the way. When we moved to Willroads, they dug a great big round pit over across there. Then they were digging tunnels. And one day I went over there to look at those tunnels, and they could have gotten killed with that dirt had caved in. That had been the end of 2 or 3 kids. And I'd have wondered where they went. But so I made them fill in the tunnels, and they finally had to fill up the pit. I think they were building a silo pit, because it was about 8 feet, no, not that big, 4 feet across and round, and it was getting towards 6 feet deep, and that was kind of deep. So, but they sure had fun digging. But when Bob was a little tyke, we lived at Grandma's, and he was out early in the morning checking with Grandma the garden and the tomatoes and kicking the rocks and just finding a beetle or a bug or something that was different, and he enjoyed nature. And when he went to California after he graduated from high school, he wrote me about a 9-page letter and explained everything he saw on the way out there and his entry into the other world. And he just told me about the palm trees, the rocks, and everything he saw. And I just loved that letter. I don't think I have it anymore, though. And he graduated from school, got married to Connie, and that was sure a good deal.
How did he meet Connie?
Well, I'll tell you how Bob met Connie. There was a girl here in town. She was a preacher's daughter, and she wanted to know where Bob was going to college. And he said, well, I'm going to Hayes. And she said, well, then I'll go to Hayes, too. So first weekend he came home from Hayes, he said, guess what? I met so-and-so on the street, and she's in Hayes, all right. Well, the next weekend he came home, he said, you know what, Mom? Connie, this girl invited him over for supper. And I went over to her house one evening to have supper with her, and there was Connie. And he said, oh, I liked Connie a lot better than this other girl. I never did really like her. But he says, I just love Connie, and she's the only one I've ever loved. And now we're going to get married. And that was great, because you can't help but love Connie. She's just the way she is. Even Bob loves Connie. Everybody loves Connie. Yeah, I mean, yeah, even Frank loves Connie. But she's like my daughter, and I try to treat her that way. And she's good to me, and I try to be good to her. And now,
Amy and Wendy.
Oh, they have 2 girls, and Wendy was always under my wing, sitting right next to me. But of course, Connie would drop the 2 of them off one year when she worked at the schoolhouse, and the next year Amy went to school, but Connie, she'd always drop Wendy off, and she wouldn't leave until Wendy got inside the house, and then Wendy'd come in and wake me up. Every morning she'd come in and wake me up, 7 o'clock. She'd say, "Come on, Graham, wake up, let's play cards." I'd say, "Okay, I'll get up." Of course, I maybe was up until 1 o'clock in the morning at the lamplighter. I wasn't too whippy at 7 o'clock in the morning, but we got up, we played cards, and we made bread together, and I had a little dish with a club and a spade and a diamond and a heart in it. And when we made bread, I'd give her some dough, and she'd put it each in one of those little pans, set it over on the cook stove and let it bake, and it'd just dry out and get crusty. But boy, she thought she really baked bread. And that was so cute. But I loved Amy just as much as Wendy. I'm sorry about that, but I do Wendy. I just love all my grandchildren. But some of them just crawl under your skin and love it. Amy is a beautiful girl, and she was a model where she worked at one of the stores here in town. And they put out a magazine, and she was modeling clothes in about 6 or 7 different pictures, and she made a beautiful model. And even today, when we went this year up to Montana, somebody got to Frank and said, "Who is that good-looking girl over there?" And Frank proudly says, "That's my granddaughter." And they said, "Oh, you couldn't have a granddaughter that pretty." He said, "Well, then it's Lorraine's granddaughter," and it was Amy.
Mary was born.
Mary was born October the 7th, 1954. And they brought her in, and there was the biggest little head of black hair you ever saw. She was just covered with black hair, and she even had hair on the back of her back like a little gorilla. And I said, "Oh," a Mexican girl brought her into me, and I said to Trina, I said, "Trina, this baby looks more like you than it does like me," because she had so much black hair. And one time when she was in there with me, after I fed her, I tied a ribbon around in her hair, right straight up in her hair. And I sent her back to the nursery, and there she was for all the people to see with a big red ribbon in her hair. And when they brought her back to me, that ribbon hadn't even fallen off of that big swig of hair. It hung on there, and here she comes with a red ribbon in her hair. And I was surprised she didn't knock it off, but she did. And she was so pretty and smiley. She was my smiler. And then a few months after she was born, in December, my sister Margaret had a baby, Linda. And Linda was so crippled and had so many surgeries and had webbed hands and webbed feet. And I went in and I looked at my little Mary, so perfect, and I thought, "Oh dear, how God has blessed me. Such a perfect little one," and someone, my sister didn't get one near so perfect. And it made me very thankful for you, Mary. And I've been thankful for you ever since. Been some times I didn't show it, but that's the way life goes. No, you've been, and Mr. Panera said about Mary, he said, "There's one thing about Mary, no matter where you see her, she's always smiling and got a hi for you." And I said, "Yeah, that's Mary." And when you were about 8 years old, I bought you a hat, a white hat with ruffles all around it. It was just constant ruffles. And I said, when I took you to church in that little white hat, you were so beautiful, I didn't even want you to grow up. But now I'm glad you did. And when you met Brad, you said you met Brad and you had a date with Brad Gall. And I said, and you had just given up Mike, or split with Mike. And I knew Mike pretty well, and I thought I knew he was a pretty good kid. So I said to Mary, "Are you sure he's all right for you to go out with?" "Oh, yes, Mom." She says, "All the kids in school give their left arm to go out with Brad Gall." I said, "Okay." So Brad shows up to pick her up, and he's such a little guy and such a neat little guy. I thought, boy, shoot, she could handle him if she had to. And so I didn't worry about Mary anymore. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. But anyway, and then But when she was a sophomore, I believe, no, in junior high, I guess they were at a dance, and he asked her for a dance, and she turned him down. So it wasn't until they were in high school that she really got to think that he was a great kid. And so they loved each other, and they still love each other, and that's great. They have 2 boys, Brian and Christopher. And now Mary has a little granddaughter. She always wanted a daughter, but God saved that for the next generation. And she just loves that little girl to death now. And her name is Bella.
Now, whose kid is she?
Christopher's. So Christopher and Danielle had this baby girl. And now Brian has just now gotten engaged to his girl, and she's a lovely girl. Mary had a bad day one time. Well, she had just gotten her license, so she was on a royal high. And she drove the car into town, and she was so thrilled she got her license, and she went into one of these drive-ins, drove right into cement post. Bang! And came home. It wasn't dented too bad. Then we had supper that evening, and some way she dropped the sugar bowl that was an antique sugar bowl with handles on both sides and sketched in work on it. It was an antique. And I said, Mary, you've done enough damage for today. Go to bed. I don't think she minded real good right away, but she did get to bed without the third thing happening. But
Okay.
and she'd get a ticket, or she'd be driving down the street in that open air convertible. Police would stop her, and she says, I just talked to him and told him how it was. And he said, well, and I'll just give you a warning. And I said she talked every policeman out of a ticket every time he wanted to stop her. I don't know if she can do as well today, but probably so. Well, Brad and Mary, you've got a lovely home out there now, and I know you're very proud of it. You've gone into a new project with that big, humongous monstrosity of a building that Brad is helping remodel, and I just wish you do very well and someday are on top of everything and don't have to worry financially. I know it's been a worry to Brad as he remodels this and does the most of the work, it sounds like. And because he knows from building big buildings out in California what you have to put in first and then what goes next, and the elevators are one of the first things, and the bathrooms, and then finally get down to the more pleasant things to put in. But Brad, you're one of my favorites. You know what I've told you. And you like dill pickles, and I'm still making them for you. And I love Brad. He's kind of like one of my own. One time, we had a big blizzard, and Bob says, Brad, come on out to our place. We'll get snowed in out there. So Brad comes out, and then when I come home from work, they're playing poker, having a good time playing poker, which they did quite often when they got together. And she comes over to my side and she says, Mom, I didn't bring him out here. Bob invited him.